Good afternoon, everybody. This is Fago Franklin III with New Stitch Media. Today, I am joined by ESPN's journalist and coordinator producer, Carolyn Meehan. How you doing today?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I can't complain. It's very beautiful out in state of Virginia right now, so I'm very blessed.
Nice.
Before we get into your journey, can you give my viewers some words of encouragement for today?
Ooh, any words of encouragement?
Yes.
It's been a difficult year for everyone. I think we can all agree on that. And I'm just looking forward to 2021. And I think all of us should be on to bigger and better. And hopefully we're turning the page on this difficult year and moving on to conquer some new goals.
Amen. Goals in 2021. That's the goal for the day.
That's right.
So tell me a little bit about your sports journey. What actually inspires you to get into the sports media as well as working with ESPN?
So I had I think a very atypical journey for people who pursue sports journalism. I didn't go to a J school. I went to a liberal arts school, and I was an English lit major. Didn't really know what I wanted to do. When I graduated, I took a PR job and then decided I wanted to go into journalism. So I went to grad school for a year. And then it was actually not even a full year, it was a semester. And then I got an internship at a Baltimore TV station. And my advisor encouraged me to take it. And so I did the internship, and then they offered me a job, which my advisor also encouraged me to take. So that's how I got into television, and I started in news, in local news, and worked my way up through the local television news markets. And along the way I've always been a big sports fan. So I always got along the best with the sports guys. Hung out with the sports department, and really wasn't looking for a career in sports, but just kind of came upon it when I was visiting or trying to visit a friend of mine who I knew worked at ESPN, a colleague who had moved on to work at ESPN. And then I caught the eye of somebody in their talent department, and they talked me into coming to ESPN, and I haven't looked back. That was about a dozen years ago.
Nice. And with you being there for a long time, what advice can you give people who is trying to break into sports media?
Well, as we all know, this was a really tough year for sports. With COVID, it's been an uncertain time. I mean, we've all seen even just some of the bowl games that are in trouble now with colleges and on the pro level where players are opting out. So that's been really hard for the sports journalists in general. I actually know a lot of people who have been just struggling to sustain a sports role, but sports has always been kind of the uniter for a lot of people. So I think the future will be strong when things bounce back. So I encourage everyone to just, if you are really passionate about sports, is just to dip your feet in the waters and go for it. And it depends on where you are in your career. I think that starting out in smaller markets with local sports, or even some teams have their own broadcast networks, those are good places to start. Or, even just writing for blogs on teams that may be in your area, that's another great place to start. And I think just having that exposure is key, and then working to make sure that people could be good mentors who are in the field and also can see your work. So, I mean, these days there's so many avenues where you can actually publish work. So if you aren't an established writer or sports television person, Yet you still have avenues where you can post stuff on social media and some blogs, and that's a way to start, I think, getting noticed.
What does it mean to you that a lot of women are starting to get hired in executive jobs in the sports organization?
I'm so happy. Just Kim Ng being the latest is just fascinating to me because I think that it's going to open avenues for a lot of people. I know that there have been, even today, there are women in sports who unfortunately face times where they're belittled or their remarks are made about how they look or why they're in the role that they're in. So it's been a difficult road for women. But I think having women in executive positions in the sports world, not even sports media, is just fantastic. It's just a trailblazing thing for women. I just think it's great, and I hope there's going to be more. And it's not just executive level; it's also seeing referees who are women who are handling bigger assignments. And well, now we have a vice president, an incoming vice president who's going to be a woman. So I think it's a great time for women right now, especially women in sports. I think it's a critical time. I think it's a great time for women to really shine where they may not have had the chance to before.
What are your top 5 favorite moments working at ESPN?
Oh my gosh. Wow, that is really hard to say. There's so many. I mean, really, honestly, just seeing how ESPN has unfolded has been just wonderful. But there are like moments that just are emotional, and moments that are happy. So I would say the Stuart Scott speech moment was really emotional, not just to me, but to everyone, and not just to people in the sports world. That was a really impactful moment. And then just seeing little accomplishments about, ESPN has a features group that does the My Wish, where they're connecting athletes with kids who are very ill, and they have wishes to be part of a team or an event. That's another really great moment. And then personally, we did an investigative report on Michigan State University and Larry Nasser, who was gymnastics team doctor there. And that won us award. It was award-winning reporting. That was just fantastic. I mean, just seeing an investigative report from start to finish is rewarding. So that's another one that's great. Diving into the ever-changing world of how people consume sports is another thing that thrills me. So seeing us getting involved with ESPN Plus into the streaming world, seeing how people are consuming games and sports news these days, it's just great. And then the podcast world too. ESPN has been very successful with its podcast, and I think that's a new audience for us. We may be behind some folks, but some of the podcast offerings that ESPN has right now, they're just tremendous. I highly encourage everyone to listen. So those are some of the few. There's so many top moments. It's really hard.
So what advice would you give journalists, as well as, just the average writer, about overcoming writer's block?
So I had such a different path than a lot of people. And here's what I would encourage. I mean, this might sound completely opposite. I know that a lot of people go to journalism school and they start right away kind of like getting involved in sports teams and coverage. But I would really, I think what's missing for a lot of people is just the basics, right? So I was an English lit major, which is really funny. We all laugh about that. But I learned, that's where you learn how to write. And I think that art is gone. So the more writing you could do, even taking writing courses now may seem like to some people like, oh, I'm way past the college age, but it's just as a refresher to do something creative and totally different from what you do every day. So take a creative writing class, because I think that helps you kind of think about things in a different way. And then the other thing is read. People get a lot of their stuff like, on cell phones, right? They're getting handheld devices for news. I still spend, I watch a ton of things. Real Sports, 60 Minutes. Those are the shows that I really like, Vice. But you can't really replace what you see on TV with reading. And I think people don't take the time these days to actually dive into a good article. And there's so many good sports features out there. So many writers who have great styles. The more you can get your hands on, then the more, the different styles you learn. And I think that's really a lost art. I think a lot of people search for the quick answer, turn on the TV or go to their phones, get the latest scores, get the latest, highlight headline news. But there's so much that is rich in writing that I think people forget about that. So reading is definitely high on the list. And I think, a combination of that, learning how to write more creatively and reading different writer styles, that helps you overcome those things like writer's block.
How has working with ESPN improved you as an individual each and every day?
Oh my gosh. I always think, it's funny because when I talk about where I work, it's, people think it's fascinating, and people who are sports fans especially. And it's true. When your job doesn't really feel like a job, it's just fun. I learn something every day. I mean, every day. And I'm not one of those people that we certainly have a lot of people at ESPN who are very knowledgeable about teams and stats. And I'm not a stats person at all. I'm not a stats geek. but there are different things I learn about how people consume sports news, and it's fascinating. And then just the stories and storylines that you get every day. It's great. I mean, that I learn how to be a better journalist every day, just because they're different stories and you have different challenges on how to get to the bottom of a story. So, every day I'm learning something new, which is just really enriching.
So in your perspective, do the Patriots keep Cam Newton?
It's interesting. We had a discussion, actually, it wasn't centered on Cam Newton, but more on Bill Belichick and the challenges he faces now, because he's not had this situation where he hasn't been in a playoff run. Right. So, so it's more of the challenges he faces. Cam Newton seems to be one of those guys who has had like a streaky career. So I don't know that this is one of those moments where you say this is it. That's the end of his career. He still has flashes of brilliance on the field. So I don't know if that's really the question. Does he survive this? I think he does in some way. I don't know if it'll be with the Patriots. But I think he will continue playing.
And I agree with you. I honestly thought that Belichick didn't really have any key players to work with this year. They don't really have a standout guy that can be a deep threat down the field. A lot of players been dropping a lot of balls. Their running game is a little bit non-efficient now these days. And it was a struggle because of COVID as well, too. So a lot of people want to sit there and blame Cam Newton, and he's not the answer. But it's kind of weird because this is a unique year that we live in general.
It is definitely a challenging year in general, and interesting to watch under Belichick, because it was magic under him for a while when he had Tom Brady. So how is he responding now? We're tossing that question around. It's really interesting to watch.
So who is your sleeper teams that's going to the playoffs this year?
Can I be a homer? No, I really don't know I don't know who the sleeper team I think is definitely going to be in. But, I'll be a homer for a second and give some love to my Washington football team.
Oh, Lord. Oh, man.
It's a troubled team that has had a lot of hurdles to get over this year. And that division is terrible. Look, I admit it, it's just terrible. But yeah, I'm hopeful. We'll see what goes on, right?
Exactly. And do you think Baker Mayfield and the Browns, if they do not make it to the playoffs this year, do you think they actually had a good season despite not making the playoffs?
They had a better season than I thought they would. But it's interesting because you brought up Cam Newton. I kind of wonder if Baker Mayfield is on a shorter leash, so to speak. He's had a lot of opportunity to prove himself, and it's been a better run than they've had, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's so yeah. I mean, I think they're an interesting team. He's in an interesting situation.
Mm-hmm. What advice could you give people about going towards their dreams and having faith?
Wow. In a place where it's so big like ESPN, that question always comes up. A lot of young people ask me that question about, am I doing the right thing? And they're, at some point they think my career is not going where I want it to be. Am I doing the right thing? And I think you really just have to be passionate about what you do. And that's not a question I can answer for each individual. I think you have to be, and this is really hard, I think, for some folks, especially young people, is you have to have a certain level of patience, and then really just kind of search your heart for what you think is right. I always want to say have faith, right? But this business isn't for everyone, and people find that out. I think there's a lot of there are a lot of moments where you question your career. I mean, that's always been the way in my career, even prior to ESPN. You work long hours, you work holidays, you work weekends, you work any hour around the clock. And it's just about what you feel in your heart is right for you. I think it can be an extremely rewarding profession. So I always want to tell people to have faith in yourself and have faith that the things that you've chosen are going to be right for you and come out working out in the end. I do think it's important to trust yourself and your judgment and trust your heart. A lot of people just kind of blindly keep doing things and then suddenly realize this isn't for them. So it's always good to have a gut check, right? Does this feel right to me? Am I enjoying it anymore? Those are important questions to ask yourself.
What advice could you give people about negotiating what they're worth and what they bring to the table?
Wow. Are you speaking in terms of salary or just your talent?
Both.
I mean, there's an art to it. I think it's some people have an easier time. I marvel sometimes when people are able to really kind of negotiate their standing as a employee. You have to have confidence in yourself. I think that's a lot of it. You have to have confidence in yourself, and then you have to have the work to back up that strut. So if you have good work that has been noticed and picked up by a lot of people, or award-winning work, then you have a little bit more confidence and you have more of a footing when you're just, saying, hey, I've done these things and I'm ready to take the next step. So I think it's all about how hard you work, what your work speaks for. And if you are doing well and your work is getting good recognition, then yeah, that's how you, I think, have the footing to say, I'm ready to do something bigger and better. And that includes salary too.
And my last question is, what at the end of the season in the playoffs, what teams will still be standing for the Super Bowl?
Wow, that's a good question. Do I have to? Who's really surprised me this year? The Steelers.
You actually believe in the Steelers?
I do. They're a sneaky team. Maybe that's my sneaky pick. Yeah, I see the Steelers. I don't. Yeah, that's tough. I don't know. I think the Steelers would get there. I don't know. Who do you think?
Oh man,
they're my sneaky pick. The Steelers.
See, on the AFC side, I'm just like you. I'm not going to go with what everybody's talking about, because we see the Chiefs.
Yeah, exactly.
But the Chiefs have so many different holes, especially in that secondary. So I feel like somebody's going to, slip up. Like I would potentially say maybe the Titans.
Oh, maybe. That's a good pick. Maybe.
And then on the NFC side, I want to say Green Bay, but I feel like they might get slipped up by somebody.
I would have said Green Bay, but I think you're right.
Yeah, so I'm going to sit there and say maybe we could see the Tennessee Titans versus I just had New Orleans Saints.
Really?
Yes. Alvin Kamara, Michael Thompson, Drew Brees is, phenomenal, even coming off that injury.
He is, but he was beaten up. So yes. I'm going to go Steelers. Golly, who am I going to pick on that? I'm going to go Steelers and I guess I would have to go Saints.
Okay.
I would have said Packers, but I think you're right. I there's something that's going to trip them up, I think. Possibly, although Aaron Rodgers is just,
lights out.
Especially under pressure.
Yes. And I feel like this year he's playing with a little bit more oomph now.
Yep.
He's playing a little bit more free.
Yeah.
But again, you just never know what to expect with the Packers. And I think this would be the first time that they actually have a number 1 seed going into Lambeau.
Yeah.
And basically the Super Bowl goes to Lambeau. I'm not sure about that. I think they play better on the road, to be honest.
Really? You think so?
Yes, ma'am. But that's the end of this segment. Before I let you go, where can my viewers actually find some of your work and follow your journey?
Oh, wow. Well, I'm behind the scenes, right? So my job, in my role, I oversee reporters and producers who put together these long investigative pieces. So a lot of that still lives on ESPN Plus. You can go there. There's and then we also work closely with the Outside the Lines team and the daily ESPN podcast folks. So our work is there as well. It's reflected every day. But our team of reporters and producers have fantastic work on ESPN Plus. You can look under the Outside the Lines brand or the E60 brand.
Amen. Thank you for joining me. Everybody, this is Fago Franklin III. You can definitely find me on Instagram, which is SuperJournalist87. You can find me on my Facebook, which is Fago Franklin III. You can find me on my YouTube channel, which is Fago Franklin III or New Stitch. You can find me on my website, which is newstitchmedia.com. Or, you can find me and Google me, Fago Franklin III, to find all the exclusive content on your favorite athletes as well as celebrities. Thank you again for joining me. Definitely have a blessed one, my friend.
Thanks for having me. Happy New Year.
Yes, ma'am. Same to you.